The arrival. The night sky above Pacifica Bay erupted in a blaze of light. Residents of the sleepy coastal town stared in awe as what appeared to be a meteor streaked across the horizon, leaving a trail of blue-green fire in its wake. But this was no ordinary celestial event. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, lead astronomer at the Pacifica Observatory, watched the object's descent with growing alarm. Its trajectory was too controlled, its speed too variable for a simple space rock. As she tracked its path, her worst fears were confirmed. It was heading straight for the heart of the city. "This is not a drill," she barked into her phone, fingers flying across her computer keyboard. "We have a potential impact event in downtown Pacifica. ETA 3 minutes. Across town, Police Chief Marcus Wells was enjoying a rare quiet evening when the alert came through. He was on his feet in seconds, barking orders to his deputies as he rushed to his cruiser. The wail of sirens filled the air as emergency services mobilized, but they all knew it was too late for a full evacuation. The object struck with a deafening roar, slamming into the central plaza and sending shockwaves rippling through the city. Windows shattered, car alarms blared, and a plume of debris shot skyward. For a moment, all was chaos and confusion. As the dust began to settle, Chief Wells arrived on the scene, his heart pounding. The plaza had been transformed into a crater, at the center of which sat a gleaming, oval-shaped craft about the size of a bus. Its surface was an iridescent blue-green, reminiscent of fish scales, and it hummed with an otherworldly energy. "My God," Wells breathed, reaching for his radio. "Command, this is Chief Wells. We're going to need every available unit down here. And get me the governor on the line. We've got a confirmed extraterrestrial event." Dr. Rodriguez arrived minutes later, her face a mix of fear and excitement. "Chief," she called out, jogging over to him. "We need to establish a perimeter immediately. We have no idea what kind of radiation or contaminants that craft might be emitting." Wells nodded, already directing his officers to push back the growing crowd of onlookers. National Guard units began to arrive, quickly establishing roadblocks and setting up floodlights around the crash site. As the night wore on, a tense standoff developed. Military personnel in hazmat suits cautiously approached the craft, scanning it with an array of instruments. News helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting the extraordinary scene to a world holding its breath. It was just before dawn when everything changed. A seam appeared in the smooth surface of the craft, and with a hiss of escaping air, a ramp extended to the ground. The assembled soldiers raised their weapons, fingers hovering over triggers. From the depths of the craft emerged a figure that made even the most hardened veterans gasp. It was a child, or at least something that resembled a child. Standing no more than 4 feet tall, its skin was a pale, luminescent blue. Large, almond-shaped eyes blinked in the harsh floodlights, and what looked like gills fluttered at the sides of its neck. The alien child took a hesitant step forward, then another. It opened its mouth, revealing rows of sharp, translucent teeth, and emitted a series of clicks and whistles. Dr. Rodriguez pushed past the stunned soldiers, ignoring the shouts of warning from Chief Wells. She approached the alien slowly, her hands raised in what she hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "Hello," she said softly, her voice shaking. "We mean you no harm. Can you understand me?" The alien cocked its head to one side, studying Elena with those unnerving eyes. Then, to everyone's amazement, it spoke, in perfect, unaccented English. "Help," it said, its voice high and melodious. "Please help, they're coming." Before Elena could respond, a bone-chilling shriek erupted from within the craft. The alien child's eyes widened in terror, and it lunged forward, grabbing Elena's hand. "Run," it screamed. "They're here." From the open hatch of the craft burst a nightmare-made flesh. It was massive, easily the size of a great white shark, but with an elongated, eel-like body covered in the same iridescent scales as the ship. Multiple rows of razor-sharp teeth lined a jaw that seemed to unhinge like a snake's, and clusters of eyes dotted its wedge-shaped head. The creature hit the ground with a wet slap and immediately began to thrash, its powerful tail sending soldiers flying. Gunfire erupted, bullets pinging harmlessly off its armored hide. In the chaos, Elena found herself being pulled away by the alien child, its grip surprisingly strong. They ran through the panicked crowd, the sounds of screams and gunfire fading behind them. "What is that thing?" Elena gasped as they ducked into an alley. The alien child's eyes seemed to shimmer with unshed tears. "A vorax," it said. "A hunter. My people created them as weapons, but they turned on us, destroyed our world. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to bring it here." Before Elena could process this information, a new sound filled the air, the unmistakable roar of rushing water. She peered out of the alley and felt her blood run cold. A massive wave was surging through the streets of Pacifica, easily 20 feet high. And riding the crest of that wave, its jaws wide open in anticipation of the feast to come, was the vorax. "Oh no," the alien child whispered. "It's begun." As the wave crashed through the city, chaos erupted. Cars were swept away like toys, buildings crumbled under the onslaught, and screaming people were pulled into the churning waters. The vorax moved with terrifying speed and efficiency, snatching up victims with its enormous jaws. Elena and the alien child scrambled to higher ground, finally finding refuge on the roof of a parking garage. From their vantage point, they could see the devastation spreading across Pacifica. The waters continued to rise, turning streets into canals and trapping survivors on rooftops and in upper floors of buildings. "This is my fault," the alien child said, its voice quavering. "I thought I could escape them, find help, but I've only brought destruction to your world." Elena knelt beside the alien, her scientific curiosity warring with her very human empathy. "What's your name?" she asked gently. The alien made a series of liquid clicks and whistles. "But you can call me Zyra," it added. "It's close enough in your language." "Okay, Zyra," Elena said, trying to keep her voice calm despite the apocalyptic scene unfolding around them. "I need you to tell me everything you know about these vorax. How do we stop them?" Zyra's gills fluttered in what Elena interpreted as a sigh. "The vorax were created by my people, the awry, as the ultimate oceanic predator. They can adapt to any aquatic environment, reproduce asexually, and possess a hive mind that allows them to coordinate their attacks. We thought we could control them, use them to terraform water worlds for colonization, but their intelligence evolved beyond our ability to contain them." An explosion rocked the city, and Elena saw with horror that the vorax had breached a gas main. Fires were now spreading, adding to the chaos. "They destroyed your world," Elena prompted, her mind racing to process the implications. Zyra nodded, a very human gesture that struck Elena as oddly poignant. "They overran our cities, turned our oceans into killing fields. A few of us managed to escape, seeking help from other worlds. But the vorax followed. They've developed a taste for sentient prey." The sound of rotors cut through the air, and Elena looked up to see military helicopters approaching. For a moment, she felt a surge of hope. Surely the full might of human military technology could defeat these creatures. But as she watched, a vorax launched itself out of the water with impossible speed, snatching a helicopter right out of the sky. The aircraft exploded as it hit the water, and Elena's hope turned to ash. "How many?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "How many vorax came in your ship?" Zyra's answer chilled her to the bone. "Just one, but that's all it takes. They can reproduce rapidly in water, creating offspring that mature within hours. And they're all linked, sharing knowledge, adapting to new threats." Elena's scientific mind began to race, seeking solutions. "What about freshwater? Can they survive in that?" Zyra shook her head. "They prefer salt water, but they can adapt to any aquatic environment given time. and they're intelligent enough to use floods and tides to spread inland. As if to illustrate this point, another massive wave surged through the city, higher than the last. Elena and Zira clung to a concrete barrier as water washed over the top level of the parking garage. When the water receded, Elena saw something that made her heart skip a beat. A group of survivors, including Chief Wells, were making their way towards the parking garage, fighting against the current. "We need to help them," Elena said, already moving towards the ramp. But Zira grabbed her arm, those large eyes wide with fear. "Wait, look." Elena followed Zira's gaze and felt her blood run cold. Cutting through the water behind the survivors, its dorsal fin barely breaking the surface, was a vorax. "We have to do something," Elena cried, feeling helpless. Zira hesitated for a moment, then straightened, a look of determination crossing its alien features. "There might be a way," it said, "but it's dangerous and you may not like it." Elena turned to the alien child, seeing for the first time not a scientific curiosity or a harbinger of doom, but a potential ally in humanity's darkest hour. "Tell me," she said. As Zira began to explain, the sun rose over Pacifica Bay, illuminating a city transformed into an alien water world. The battle for Earth's survival had only just begun, and humanity would need every ounce of its legendary ingenuity and determination to weather the storm that was coming. For in the depths of the flood-ravaged city, the vorax were multiplying, evolving, and preparing to spread their aquatic empire across the globe. The fate of two worlds now rested in the hands of an unlikely pair, a human scientist and an alien child, and the clock was ticking. First contact. The rooftop of the Pacifica Bay parking garage had become an island of hope in a sea of chaos. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, illuminating the flooded cityscape, more survivors made their way to this makeshift refuge. Chief Wells, soaked and exhausted, helped the last of his group up onto the roof. "Dr. Rodriguez," he called out, his voice hoarse. "Thank God you're alive. We need tow." He stopped short, his eyes widening as they fell on Zira. "What in the hell is that?" Elena stepped protectively in front of the alien child. "This is Zira," she said, her tone brooking no argument. "And she might be our only hope of surviving this." Wells' hand instinctively moved to his holstered weapon. "That thing is responsible for this disaster." "No," Elena said firmly. "She's a refugee just like us. The real threat is in the water." As if on cue, a chilling shriek echoed across the flooded city, followed by the sound of twisting metal. In the distance, they could see a vorax tearing into the upper floors of a hotel, hunting for trapped survivors. Wells' face paled. "My God," he whispered, "how do we fight those things?" Elena turned to Zira, who had been watching the exchange with those unnervingly large eyes. "Tell them what you told me," she encouraged. Zira stepped forward, her gills fluttering nervously. The assembled survivors recoiled, murmurs of fear and disgust rippling through the crowd. But when she spoke, her clear, childlike voice silenced them all. "Your weapons are useless against the vorax," she said. "Their scales can deflect your projectiles, and they heal rapidly from any wounds. But they do have weaknesses. They're sensitive to certain frequencies of sound, and extreme heat can disrupt their ability to regenerate." Wells frowned, processing this information. "So what, we blast them with rock music and flamethrowers?" Zira cocked her head, confused by the reference. "Not exactly, but I can help you modify your technology to create weapons that will be effective against them. The real challenge will be containing them, preventing their spread." One of the survivors, a middle-aged woman clutching a sodden briefcase, spoke up. "Why should we trust you? How do we know this isn't some kind of alien invasion?" Zira's shoulders slumped, and for a moment, she looked every bit the child she resembled. "I understand your fear," she said softly. "My people made a terrible mistake in creating the vorax. Many worlds have paid the price for our arrogance. I came here seeking help, hoping your species might succeed where mine failed. Instead, I've brought this nightmare to your doorstep. I can only offer my knowledge and my deepest apologies." A tense silence fell over the group. Elena looked from face to face, seeing a mix of fear, anger, and confusion. She took a deep breath, knowing that the next few moments could determine the fate of not just Pacifica Bay, but potentially the entire planet. "Look," she said, her voice ringing out clear and strong. "I know this is all impossible to leave. A few hours ago, our biggest worry was paying the bills or getting to work on time. But the reality is, we're in the middle of a crisis unlike anything humanity has ever faced. We can waste time arguing and pointing fingers, or we can work together to save as many lives as possible." She gestured to Zira. "This child may look alien to us, but she's risking everything to help us. Her knowledge is our best chance of survival. I say we listen to what she has to say." Chief Wells studied Elena for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, Doctor. You've earned enough trust from this city over the years. If you vouch for Zira, then we'll hear her out." He turned to the alien child. "But make no mistake, if this turns out to be some kind of trick, there won't be a place on this planet you can hide." Zira nodded solemnly. "I understand. Thank you for your trust. Now we must act quickly. The Vorax are multiplying as we speak." Over the next hour, Zira outlined what she knew about the Vorax, their strengths, weaknesses, and terrifyingly efficient hunting strategies. The survivors listened with growing horror as they realized the true scale of the threat they faced. "So these things can communicate telepathically?" Wells asked, his brow furrowed. Zira nodded. "Yes, over vast distances. It's how they coordinate their attacks and share information about new prey and environments." "That explains how they've adapted so quickly," Elena mused. "They're like a hive mind, instantly sharing any new knowledge or mutations." "Exactly," Zira confirmed, "which is why containment is crucial. If even one Vorax escapes to the open ocean, they could spread across your entire world within weeks." The gravity of the situation settled over the group like a heavy blanket. Wells cleared his throat. "Okay, so what's our first move?" Elena had been scribbling notes furiously in a waterlogged notebook. She looked up, her eyes bright with a spark of scientific problem-solving. "We need to establish communication with the outside world, let them know what we're dealing with. Then we need to gather resources, electronics, chemicals, anything we can use to create Zira's anti-Vorax weapons." Wells nodded. "I've got a satellite phone in my cruiser. If we can reach it, we can contact the state government, get the military involved." "No." Zira's sudden outburst startled everyone. "I'm sorry, but you can't bring in more military forces. Not yet. The Vorax will sense a large-scale threat and scatter. We need to contain them here, in this city, before we can hope to eradicate them." Elena put a reassuring hand on Zira's shoulder. "She's right. We need to keep this localized for now, but we do need help." She turned to the group. "Is anyone here an engineer? An electrician? We need people who can help us build Zira's devices." A few hands went up, and Elena felt a glimmer of hope. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to adapt, to come together in a crisis. Now that strength would be put to the ultimate test. As the group began to organize, dividing into teams for scavenging and construction, a low rumble shook the building. Everyone froze, eyes darting to the water's edge. A massive Vorax, larger than any they'd seen so far, breached the surface. Its cluster of eyes seemed to fix directly on the rooftop, and its jaw opened in a silent roar. "It's the Alpha," Zira whispered, her voice trembling. "The original. It sensed our resistance." The Alpha Vorax began to circle the building, its massive body creating waves that lapped at the edges of the roof. The survivors huddled together, watching in horrified fascination. Elena felt a tug on her sleeve. She looked down to see Zira, those alien eyes wide with an emotion that needed no translation: fear. "There's something I need to tell you," Zira said, her voice barely audible above the lapping water. "Something about me, and why the Alpha is so focused on us." Before Elena could respond, the Alpha Vorax let out a piercing shriek that shattered windows for blocks around. The survivors clapped their hands over their ears, some falling to their knees in pain. In that moment of confusion, Zira stepped to the edge of the roof. Her small form seemed to shimmer, and to Elena's astonishment, the gills on her neck began to flare open. "Zira, what are you doing?" Elena cried, reaching for the alien child. But Zira was already moving, her body arsing gracefully as she dove into the roiling waters below. The Alpha Vorax immediately gave chase, its massive form cutting through the flood with terrifying speed. "No," Elena screamed, held back by Chief Wells as she tried to follow Zira into the water. For a few heart-stopping moments, the surface was still. Then, with a splash that sent water cascading over the roof, Zira burst from the depths, but she was changed. Her body had elongated, her limbs transformed into powerful flippers. She looked like a cross between a dolphin and the alien child they had come to know, her blue skin glistening in the sunlight. The Alpha Vorax followed, its jaws snapping shut inches from Zira's tail. The two beings began an intricate dance, diving and surfacing in a deadly game of cat and mouse. "She's like them," Wells breathed, his grit on Elena loosening in shock. Elena's scientific mind raced to keep up with what she was seeing. "No, not like them, but related somehow. Is this why the Vorax followed her? Why they're so focused on us?" As it can answer, Zira's voice echoed in their minds, a telepathic broadcast that made everyone on the roof gasp. "I'm sorry for the deception," Zira's thoughts rang out. "My people, the awry, are distant genetic cousins to the Vorax. We thought this connection would allow us to control them. We were wrong." The Alpha Vorax let out another bone-shaking roar, lunging for Zira. She barely dodged, leaving a trail of luminescent blue blood in the water. "I can distract it, lead it away," Zira's voice continued in their heads. "But you must hurry. Build the devices. Save your world where we could not save ours." With a final powerful leap, Zira disappeared beneath the waves. The Alpha Vorax followed, and soon the flood waters were still once more. Elena stood at the edge of the roof, tears streaming down her face as she stared at the spot where Zira had vanished. She felt a hand on her shoulder and turned to see Chief Wells, his face a mask of grim determination. "You heard the kid," he said softly. "We've got work to do." Elena nodded, wiping her eyes. She turned to the group of survivors, seeing a mix of fear, confusion, and dawning resolve on their faces. "All right," she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "We've been given a chance, and we can't waste it. We are now Earth's first line of defense against a threat beyond anything we've ever imagined. But we have knowledge, we have resources, and most importantly, we have each other." She picked up her notebook, flipping to the pages where she had scribbled Zira's instructions. "Let's get to work. We've got some alien sharks to fry." As the group began to mobilize, Elena cast one last look at the deceptively calm waters surrounding their refuge. Somewhere out there, a brave alien child was fighting for a world not her own. Elena silently vowed that Zira's sacrifice would not be in vain. The battle for Pacifica Bay, and for Earth itself, had truly begun. The hunt begins. The makeshift laboratory on the roof of the Pacifica Bay parking garage buzzed with frantic activity. What had once been a simple concrete slab was now a hodgepodge of salvaged equipment, jury-rigged electronics, and bubbling chemical concoctions. At the center of it all stood Dr. Elena Rodriguez, her hair wild and her eyes bright with a mixture of exhaustion and manic energy. "Pass me that oscillator," she called out, not looking up from the device she was assembling. A young man, who just days ago had been a college student worried about his next exam, quickly obliged. Chief Wells approached, his uniform stained and torn, a makeshift harpoon gun slung over his shoulder. "How's it coming, Doc?" he asked, his voice gruff but tinged with hope. Elena held up the device, a tangle of wires and circuits attached to what looked like a modified megaphone. If Zira's instructions are correct, this should emit a frequency that will disorient the Vorax. It won't kill them, but it should give us an edge. Wells nodded, his eyes scanning the flooded cityscape beyond their roofed-up sanctuary. The waters had receded slightly, leaving a maze of partially submerged buildings and debris-choked streets. But the threat remained. Every so often, a dorsal fin would slice through the water, a chilling reminder of the alien predators lurking just below the surface. "We've got movement on the east side," a voice crackled over the walkie-talkie clipped to Wells' belt. "Looks like survivors trying to reach higher ground." Wells cursed under his breath. "We need more time," he muttered. Elena stood, stretching muscles stiff from hours of intense work. "We're as ready as we'll ever be," she said. "It's time to take the fight to them." The chief studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right, let's do this. Johnson," he called out to a nearby officer, "get the boats ready. We're going hunting." Within minutes, a small flotilla of motorboats and jet skis, salvaged from a nearby marina, was assembled at the edge of the roof. Each craft was manned by a mix of police officers and civilian volunteers, armed with a variety of makeshift weapons and Elena's sonic devices. As they prepared to lower the boats into the water, Elena felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see Maria, the middle-aged woman who had initially distrusted Zira. "Be careful out there," Maria said softly. "We're counting on you." Elena managed a tight smile. "We'll do our best. Keep working on the long-range communicator. If we can't contain this, the world needs to know what it's up against." With a final nod to Wells, Elena climbed into one of the boats. The chief gave the signal, and the small fleet was lowered into the murky floodwaters. For a few tense moments, all was quiet save for the gentle lapping of waves against the boat's hulls. Then, with a roar of engines, they set off into the drowned city. Elena clutched her sonic device, her knuckles white. She scanned the water, looking for any sign of movement. "Remember," she called out to the others, "aim for the eyes and gills. That's where they're most vulnerable." As if summoned by her words, a Vorax burst from the water just yards from their boat. Its serpentine body oozed through the air, jaws gaping wide to reveal rows of razor-sharp teeth. "Now!" Elena screamed, activating her device. A high-pitched wail filled the air, causing everyone to wince. But the effect on the Vorax was immediate and dramatic. It thrashed in midair, its trajectory thrown off. Instead of landing on their boat, it crashed back into the water with a massive splash. "It's working," someone shouted. But their celebration was short-lived. The water around them began to churn as more Vorax converged on their position. The aliens had adapted quickly, pushing through the discomfort caused by the sonic weapons. "They're learning," Elena realized with a sinking feeling. "We need to change tactics." Wells was already in motion, firing his harpoon gun at the nearest Vorax. The projectile struck true, embedding itself in the creature's eye cluster. The Vorax shrieked in pain, thrashing wildly and capsizing one of the smaller boats. "Get those people out of the water," Wells roared, reloading his weapon. Elena's boat surged forward, narrowly avoiding the snapping jaws of another Vorax. She reached out, holding a sputtering survivor aboard. As she did, she caught a glimpse of something in the water, a flash of luminescent blue. "Zira," she whispered. But there was no time to dwell on it. The battle raged on, a chaotic melee of boats, alien predators, and desperate humans fighting for survival. Elena's mind raced, trying to process everything she was seeing, looking for a pattern, a weakness they could exploit. That's when she noticed it. The Vorax weren't attacking randomly. They were herding the boats, driving them towards the marina. Elena shouted to Wells, "They're forcing us towards deeper water." The chief's eyes widened in understanding. "They're smarter than we thought. Fall back. Everyone, head for the shallows." But it was too late. A massive form rose from the depths ahead of them, the Alpha Vorax. It was even larger than Elena remembered, its body crisscrossed with scars from its battle with Zira, its cluster of eyes fixed on their small fleet, and Elena felt a chill run down her spine. There was intelligence in that gaze, cold and alien and utterly ruthless. The Alpha opened its maw and let out a sound unlike anything they'd heard before, not a roar, but a complex series of clicks and whistles. Immediately, the other Vorax fell into formation around it. They're coordinating, Elena breathed, equal parts terrified and fascinated. It's giving them orders. Wells gritted his teeth. Any bright ideas, Doc? Because we could really use one right about now. Elena's mind raced. The sonic weapons were losing effectiveness, and their conventional arms were barely scratching the Vorax's armored hides. They needed something else, something unexpected. Her eyes fell on a half-submerged gas station, its pumps barely visible above the waterline. A desperate plan began to form. "Chief," she said, her voice tight with tension, "how good are you at pool?" Wells looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "What?" "Bank shot," Elena explained quickly. "If we can rupture those gas tanks and ignite them." Understanding dawned on the chief's face. "It's crazy," he said. Then he grinned, a fierce light in his eyes. "I like it. Everyone," he shouted to the other boats. "Fall back to the gas station, and someone find me something to light." The next few minutes were a blur of desperate action. Boats weaved through the debris-choked waters, narrowly avoiding snapping jaws and thrashing tails. Wells stood at the prow of his boat, harpoon gun raised, waiting for the perfect moment. The Alpha Vorax lunged, its massive body leaving a wake that threatened to swamp the smaller craft. Wells fired, his harpoon trailing a makeshift fuse fashioned from a gas-soaked rag. Time seemed to slow as the harpoon arsed through the air. Elena held her breath, watching its trajectory. It struck the gas pump dead center, the impact sending up a spray of fuel. "Now," Wells roared. A flaming arrow, courtesy of sporting goods store raid, streaked across the water. For a heart-stopping moment, Elena thought it would miss. Then the world exploded. The fireball was massive, engulfing the gas station and a large swath of the surrounding area. The shockwave sent boats tumbling, and a wave of superheated air washed over them. When Elena's vision cleared, she saw the Alpha Vorax thrashing in agony, its scales blackened and peeling. The other Vorax scattered in confusion, their hive mind disrupted by their leader's pain. It worked. Elena gasped, hardly daring to believe it. The human flotilla regrouped quickly, pressing their advantage. Harpoons flew, sonic weapons blared, and improvised explosives splashed into the water. The Vorax, for the first time since their arrival, seemed to be on the defensive. As the battle raged on, Elena noticed movement in her peripheral vision. She turned to see a familiar blue form cutting through the water towards them. "Zira," she cried out. The alien child, in her aquatic form, breached the surface near their boat. "Elena," Zira's voice echoed in her mind. "You've done well, but this is only the beginning. The Alpha is wounded, but not defeated, and there are more Vorax coming." Elena's heart sank. More. From where? Zira's alien features contorted in what might have been a grimace. "They've adapted faster than I anticipated. They're using the city's sewer and drainage systems to spread inland. If we don't stop them soon, containment will be impossible." Wells, overhearing the telepathic conversation, joined them at the side of the boat. "So what's the plan?" he asked, his voice grim but determined. Zira's gaze moved from Elena to Wells, then to the battle still raging around them. "We need to cut off their escape routes, trap them in the bay. Then," she hesitated. "Then what?" Elena prompted. "Then we need to make the water inhospitable to them," Zira finished. "Your world has weapons, chemicals that can alter the composition of water on a large scale, yes." Elena's eyes widened as she realized what Zira was suggesting. "You're talking about poisoning the entire bay." Wells shook his head. "Even if we could get our hands on something like that, the environmental damage would be catastrophic." I know, Zira said, her mental voice heavy with regret. But if the Vorax escape to the open ocean, the damage to your world will be far worse. Sometimes, to save the body, you must sacrifice a limb. A heavy silence fell over them, broken only by the sounds of ongoing battle. Elena looked out over the flooded city, her home, transformed into an alien water world. She thought of all the lives already lost, and the billions more at stake if they failed. "Okay," she said finally, her voice barely a whisper. "Let's do it. But we do this smart. We evacuate everyone we can, gather all the resources we need, and we keep fighting, keep them contained until the very last moment." Wells nodded, his jaw set in grim determination. "I'll coordinate with the National Guard, get us whatever chemicals we need. But Doc," he added, fixing Elena with a hard stare, "this is a one-way trip for whoever delivers the payload." "I know," Elena said. She turned to Zira. "Will you help us? Guide us through the sewers, help us outthink them." Zira's alien eyes seemed to shimmer with an emotion Elena couldn't quite read. "Until the end," she promised. As they turned their boat back towards their rooftop base, Elena felt the weight of their decision settling on her shoulders. They had won their first major battle against the Vorax, but the war was far from over, and the price of victory might be higher than any of them could have imagined. The hunt had only just begun, and the fate of two worlds hung in the balance. Unexpected allies. The command center on the rooftop of Pacifica Bay's parking garage had transformed once again. What had started as a makeshift refugee camp, then evolved into an impromptu laboratory, was now a bustling war room. Maps of the city's sewer system were spread out across folding tables, marked with the latest Vorax sightings and possible nest locations. Elena stood at the center of it all, her eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep, but burning with fierce determination. She traced a line along one of the main drainage pipes, her finger coming to rest on the bay. "This is where we make our stand," she said, her voice carrying across the assembled group of survivors, soldiers, and scientists. Chief Wells nodded grimly. "The National Guard has come through with the chemicals. We've got enough to turn the entire bay into a dead zone for the next decade." A ripple of unease passed through the crowd. The magnitude of what they were about to do, the deliberate poisoning of their home, weighed heavily on everyone. "There has to be another way," someone in the back called out. "We can't just destroy everything." Elena straightened, facing the group. "I understand your concerns. Believe me, this isn't a decision we've made lightly. But you've all seen what we're up against. The Vorax are evolving, adapting faster than we can counter them. If even one escapes to the open ocean," she let the thought hang in the air, the implications clear to all. A new voice cut through the tension. "Perhaps I can offer an alternative." All heads turned to see a figure emerging from the stairwell. He was tall and lean, with angular features that seemed almost too perfect to be human. His eyes, a startling shade of violet, surveyed the group with calm intelligence. Chief Wells' hand instinctively went to his weapon. "Who the hell are you? How did you get up here?" The stranger raised his hands in a placating gesture. "My name is Arkson. I'm not from around here." Elena's eyes widened in recognition. "You're like Zira, an awry." Arkson nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Indeed, though I prefer this form for land-based interactions." His gaze settled on Elena. "Dr. Rodriguez, I presume. Zira spoke highly of you." "Zira?" Elena's heart leaped. "Is she all right? We haven't seen her since the battle in the bay." A shadow passed over Arkson's features. "Zira is recovering. Her confrontation with the Alpha Vorax took a toll, but that's partly why I'm here." He stepped forward, his movements fluid and graceful. "We've been monitoring your situation from orbit. Your resistance against the Vorax is impressive, but as you've realized, conventional methods won't be enough." Wells crossed his arms, skepticism written across his face. "And I suppose you've got some magic alien solution." Arkson's violet eyes flickered with something that might have been amusement. "Not magic, Chief Wells, science. Specifically, a genetically engineered bacterium designed to target and break down the Vorax's unique biology. A buzz of excitement ran through the crowd. Elena felt a surge of hope, tempered by scientific caution. A bacteria that could kill the Vorax without harming other marine life. Axon nodded. Precisely. It would render the bay uninhabitable for the Vorax, while leaving your world's ecosystem largely intact. Why haven't you used this before? Wells demanded. If you've had this weapon all along, why let the Vorax destroy your world? The Aquari's composure slipped for a moment, revealing a deep well of pain and regret. By the time we developed it, it was too late for our world. The Vorax had spread too far, adapted too much. We've been searching for a planet where we could deploy it early enough to make a difference. He looked around the group, his gaze intense. This is our chance, yours and ours, to stop the Vorax before they can establish a true foothold. Elena's mind raced with the possibilities. How quickly can we synthesize this bacteria? And how do we distribute it? Axon pulled a small, iridescent sphere from a pouch at his waist. I've brought a sample with me. With your equipment and my guidance, we can produce enough to treat the entire bay within 48 hours. A ripple of hope passed through the assembled humans. But Wells remained skeptical. This all sounds too good to be true. How do we know we can trust you? Elena understood the chief's caution, but she also recognized the opportunity before them. She stepped forward, placing a hand on Wells' arm. Chief, I know it's a risk, but think about it. The Aquari created the Vorax. Who better to help us defeat them? And this way, we don't have to destroy our home to save it. Wells held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, Doc. I trust your judgment. But, he added, turning to Axon, you'll be under constant surveillance. One wrong move, and we do this our way. Clear. Axon bowed his head slightly. Perfectly clear, Chief Wells. Now, shall we begin? Time is of the essence. The next 48 hours were a blur of activity. Elena worked side by side with Axon, marveling at the advanced science of the Aquari, while contributing her own expertise in microbiology. The rest of the survivors threw themselves into preparation, fortifying their position, gathering supplies, and planning for the final confrontation with the Vorax. As the deadline approached, Elena found herself on the roof, staring out at the flooded city bathed in moonlight. The surface of the water was deceptively calm, betraying no hint of the alien terrors lurking beneath. She sensed rather than heard Axon approach. Beautiful, isn't it? The Aquari said softly. Even in the midst of catastrophe, your world has a certain resilience. Elena nodded, not taking her eyes off the horizon. Was stubborn that way. She turned to face him. Axon, there's something I've been wanting to ask. Why did you really come here? I'm grateful for your help, but you wonder why an advanced species would risk so much for a world not their own. Axon finished. He was silent for a moment, his alien eyes reflecting the starlight. The truth is, Dr. Rodriguez, we need you as much as you need us. The Vorax have driven us to the brink of extinction. We've been searching for a new home, yes, but more than that, we've been searching for hope. He gestured out at the city. What you've accomplished here, holding out against impossible odds, adapting, fighting back, it's remarkable. In all our travels, we've never encountered a species quite like humanity. Your tenacity, your creativity, it gives us hope that the Vorax can be defeated. Elena felt the weight of his words, the responsibility they carried. So what happens after? Assuming we succeed. Axon's expression softened. That will be up to your people to decide. We come seeking alliance, not conquest. Perhaps our two species can learn from each other, grow together. Their conversation was interrupted by a shout from below. Dr. Rodriguez. Axon, it's ready. They shared a look of determination and made their way back to the lab. The bacteria culture was loaded into dispersal devices, a mix of Aquari technology and human ingenuity. As dawn broke over Pacifica Bay, A small fleet of boats set out into the flooded streets. Each carried a team of humans and a single awry, working in perfect synchronization to deploy the bacteria. Elena found herself in the lead boat with Chief Wells, Axon, and to her immense relief, Zira. The young awry looked pale and drawn, but her eyes burned with determination. "I'm sorry I disappeared," Zira said, her voice in Elena's mind tinged with regret. "I needed time to heal and to contact my people." Elena reached out, squeezing Zira's hand. "You've done more than enough. We wouldn't have made it this far without you." Their moment of reunion was cut short as a familiar roar echoed across the water. The Alpha Vorax, its massive form scared, but no less terrifying, burst from the depths. It was flanked by dozens of its offspring, their numbers far greater than Elena had feared. "They know what we're trying to do," Axon said grimly. "They'll throw everything they have at us to stop the dispersal." Wells raised his weapon, a determined set to his jaw. "Then we give them one hell of a fight. All units engage. Protect the dispersal teams at all costs." The battle that followed was unlike anything in human history. Boats weaved through the flooded streets, deploying clouds of bacteria, while fending off relentless Vorax attacks. The awry revealed more of their abilities, manipulating water currents to aid their human allies and confuse the Vorax. Elena found herself in the thick of the action, her scientific mind cataloguing every detail, even as she fought for survival. She watched in awe as Zira, despite her weakened state, dove into the water to distract a group of Vorax, leading them away from a vulnerable dispersal team. But the tide of battle turned when the Alpha made its move. With terrifying intelligence, it targeted the boat carrying the largest concentration of the bacteria culture. Elena watched in horror as it smashed the vessel, sending its precious cargo into the water. "No," she cried out, knowing that without that batch, they wouldn't have enough to treat the entire bay. Axon's voice cut through her despair. "Elena, the Alpha, its wounds haven't fully healed. The bacteria in the water, if we can get it to ingest enough." Understanding dawned. Elena turned to Wells. "Chief, we need to provoke the Alpha, get it to take in as much water as possible." Wells nodded grimly. "I've got just the thing." He pulled out a familiar device, one of Elena's original sonic weapons. "Let's see how it likes a taste of its own medicine." What followed was a deadly game of cat and mouse. Wells piloted their boat with skill born of desperation, weaving between debris and smaller Vorax. Elena and Axon worked in tandem, using a mix of science and awry abilities to corral the Alpha towards the area of highest bacteria concentration. Zira's voice echoed in their minds. "I'll draw it in. Be ready." Before anyone could protest, Zira launched herself into the water. She swam circles around the Alpha, her movements a hypnotic dance that enraged the massive predator. It lunged for her repeatedly, taking in great gulps of bacteria-laden water in the process. "Now," Axon shouted. Wells activated the sonic device at full power. The Alpha Vorax reared back, disoriented and in pain. In that moment of vulnerability, the bacteria went to work. The effect was both fascinating and horrifying. The Alpha's armored hide began to bubble and slow off. It thrashed in the water, letting out a psychic scream of agony that sent the other Vorax into a frenzy of confusion. As the Alpha Vorax began to dissolve before their eyes, Elena felt a complex mix of emotions, relief, sadness, and a scientist's deep curiosity. She turned to Axon, a question forming on her lips, but the look in his alien eyes stopped her short. "It's not over," he said softly. "Look." Elena followed his gaze to the horizon. Her heart sank as she saw a wall of water rising in the distance, a tidal wave unlike anything she'd ever seen. "The death throes of the Alpha," Axon explained. "A final attempt to spread its offspring beyond our reach." As the wave approached, Elena realized that the battle for Pacifica Bay, and for Earth itself, had entered its final, most desperate phase. The Vorax were making their last stand, and humanity would have to dig deep to weather this final storm. She gripped the side of the boat, her voice carrying across the water to all who could hear. "Brace yourselves. We've come too far to fail now." The wave loomed ever closer, carrying with it the fate of two worlds. Turning the tide, the wall of water loomed over Pacifica Bay, a liquid mountain carrying the desperate legacy of the dying Alpha Vorax. Elena's knuckles were white as she gripped the side of the boat, her mind racing through calculations and possibilities. "We can't outrun it," Chief Wells said, his voice tight with tension. Arkson's eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. "No, but we can redirect it." Before anyone could ask what he meant, Arkson dove into the water. His form shimmered and elongated, transforming into something that resembled a cross between a manta ray and a dolphin. He was joined by other awry, their movements synchronized as they swam towards the oncoming wave. "What are they doing?" Wells demanded. Elena watched in fascination as the awry began to move in intricate patterns, their bodies generating currents that seemed to push against the massive wave. "They're trying to change its course," she realized. "But it's not enough. They need more power." Zira's voice echoed in their minds. "We need your help. Your machines, your energy, anything that can generate vibration in the water." Elena's eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. "The sonic devices. Chief, get on the radio. Tell everyone to aim their sonic weapons at the base of the wave. Full power." As Wells barked orders into his radio, Elena turned to the rest of their team. "Engines at full throttle, everyone. We need to create as much turbulence as we can." All across the flooded city, boats roared to life. Sonic devices, originally designed to disorient the Vorax, now blared at full power towards the oncoming tsunami. The air filled with a cacophony of sound, and the water churned with conflicting currents. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed like their efforts would be in vain. The wave continued its inexorable approach, dark shapes visible within its depths, thousands of Vorax offspring, ready to spread across the globe. Then, almost imperceptibly at first, the wave began to curve. The combined efforts of awry biomanipulation and human technology were forcing the tsunami to change course, directing it towards the narrow mouth of the bay. "It's working," someone shouted, their voice barely audible over the din. Elena allowed herself a moment of hope before reality set in. "The seawall," she said, turning to Wells. "If that wave hits the seawall at full force..." The chief's face paled as he understood the implications. The seawall was all that stood between the flooded bay and the open ocean. If it broke, "We need to reinforce it," Wells said. "Now." What followed was a desperate race against time. As the awry and the sonic devices continued to guide the massive wave, every available boat rushed towards the seawall. They brought anything that could help absorb the impact: debris, abandoned vehicles, even chunks of buildings torn loose by the flood. Elena found herself working alongside humans and awry alike, her scientific knowledge put to the test as they frantically engineered makeshift barriers and support structures. Zira was there too, her small form belying her strength as she helped move heavy debris into place. As they worked, Elena couldn't help but marvel at the sight. Humans and aliens working in perfect harmony towards a common goal. It was everything she had ever dreamed of as a scientist, proof that different species could overcome their differences and achieve the impossible. But there was no time for reflection. The wave was upon them. "Brace for impact," Wells roared. Elena felt Zira's hand slip into hers as the wall of water crashed down. The noise was deafening, a roar that seemed to shake the very foundations of the earth. Spray and foam filled the air, momentarily blinding everyone. For a terrifying moment, Elena thought they had failed. She could feel the seawall shuddering beneath her feet, threatening to give way at any second. But then gradually the roar began to subside. The spray settled, revealing a scene of chaos, but the seawall still stood. A cheer went up from the assembled humans and awry alike. They had done it. The wave had been contained within the bay. But their celebration was short-lived. Dark shapes began to surface all around them, vorax that had survived the impact, their eyes gleaming with alien hunger. "They're not giving up," Arkson said, his voice grim. "The bacteria hasn't had time to fully saturate the bay. We need to hold them off until it takes effect." Wells raised his weapon, a fierce grin on his face. "Then let's give them a fight they'll never forget." What followed was a battle unlike any in human history. Boats weaved through the debris-choked waters, humans and awry fighting side by side against the vorax swarm. Elena found herself in the thick of it, her scientific mind cataloguing every detail, even as she fought for survival. She watched in awe as Zira, despite her small size, used her awry abilities to manipulate water currents, creating whirlpools that disoriented the vorax. Arkson was a blur of motion, his transformed body slicing through the water as he engaged the largest of the alien predators. But for every vorax they defeated, 2 more seemed to take its place. Elena could see the fatigue setting in among the defenders. They were outnumbered and outmatched in the water. Just when it seemed like they might be overwhelmed, a familiar roar filled the air. Elena looked up to see a fleet of helicopters cresting the horizon. The National Guard had finally broken through the storm surrounding Pacifica Bay. Reinforcements had arrived. As the helicopters began to strafe the water, targeting the largest concentrations of vorax, Elena felt a surge of renewed hope. But she also knew that this level of firepower risked damaging the seawall they had worked so hard to reinforce. "We need to draw them away from the wall," she shouted to Wells. "Concentrate our forces in the center of the bay." The chief nodded, quickly relaying orders to both the boats and the incoming air support. As their defensive line shifted, Elena noticed something strange. The vorax weren't pursuing them with the same relentless aggression. In fact, some of them seemed to be swimming erratically, their movements becoming sluggish. "The bacteria," Arkson said, his eyes wide with realization. "It's starting to take effect." Elena's scientific mind kicked into high gear. "We need to keep them active, keep them taking in more contaminated water." An idea struck her. "The sonic devices, if we modulate the frequency, we might be able to agitate them, make them thrash around more." Zira's voice chimed in their minds. "I can help with that. My people can amplify the sound waves through the water." With renewed purpose, the defenders put their plan into action, the air filled with a pulsing, multi-layered sonic barrage. The awry moved through the water in intricate patterns, their bodies serving as living amplifiers for the sound waves. The effect on the vorax was immediate and dramatic. They began to thrash wildly, their movements becoming increasingly uncoordinated. Some of the smaller ones started to dissolve before their eyes, their armored hides unable to withstand the bacteria's onslaught. But the larger vorax, descendants of the Alpha, proved more resilient. They fought through the disorientation, their primitive minds focused on one goal: escape. A group of them began to converge on the seawall, intent on breaking through to the open ocean. "No," Elena cried out, realizing the danger. If even one of them escaped, all their efforts would be for nothing. In that moment, Zira did something that would be etched in Elena's memory forever. The young awry launched herself towards the seawall, her body elongating and growing until she was easily as large as the biggest vorax. "Zira, wait," Elena called out, but it was too late. Zira positioned herself between the vorax and the seawall. Then, with a psychic cry that resonated through the minds of all present, she began to sing. It was unlike anything Elena had ever heard, a haunting, multi-layered melody that seemed to ripple through the water itself. The effect on the vorax was immediate. They froze in place, their alien minds captivated by the song. Even the humans and awry found themselves momentarily entranced. Arkson's voice snapped Elena back to reality. "It's an old awry technique," he explained, his tone filled with awe and sorrow. "A psychic song that can control aquatic life forms. But at this scale, with beings as powerful as the vorax, the strain on her will be enormous." Elena understood the unspoken implication. Zira was sacrificing herself to give them this final chance. With tears in her eyes, Elena turned to Wells. "We need to end this now. Concentrate everything we have on those Vorax. Don't let Zira's sacrifice be in vain." The chief nodded grimly, relaying orders to all their forces. Every boat, helicopter, and awry converged on the entranced Vorax, unleashing a barrage of sonic pulses, weapons fire, and alien biomanipulation. The water churned with the combined assault. Elena watched as the Vorax, held in place by Zira's song, began to disintegrate under the onslaught of bacteria and firepower. One by one, the alien predators dissolved into the bay, until finally the last of them was gone. A hush fell over the battlefield. Zira's song faded, and her massive form began to shrink and sink beneath the waves. Without thinking, Elena dove into the water. She swam with all her might, pushing through the debris and the lingering currents. Her lungs were burning when she finally reached Zira. The young awry was barely conscious, her body reverting to its childlike form. Elena wrapped her arms around her alien friend and kicked for the surface. As they broke through, gasping for air, Elena felt strong hands pulling them into a nearby boat. She looked up to see Oxen and Wells, their faces etched with concern and relief. "Is it over?" Elena asked, cradling Zira's still form. "Did we win?" Oxen's violet eyes scanned the bay, a look of wonder spreading across his face. "Yes," he said softly. "The Vorax are gone. The bacteria is already starting to break down. Pacifica Bay and your world are safe." The realization rippled through the assembled humans and awry. Cheers erupted from boats and helicopters. People embraced, laughed, and cried. Elena felt a small hand squeeze hers. She looked down to see Zira's eyes fluttering open. "Did we do it?" the young awry asked, her mental voice weak but filled with hope. Elena smiled through her tears. "Yes, Zira, we did it. Together." As the sun began to set over Pacifica Bay, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Elena realized that this was more than just a victory over an alien threat. It was the dawn of a new era, one where humanity had proven its worth among the stars, and where the bonds forged in crisis promised a future of unprecedented cooperation and discovery. The bay waters lapped gently against the boats, as if the ocean itself was breathing a sigh of relief. The battle was over, but the real work of rebuilding, of forging a new relationship between humans and awry, was just beginning. Elena looked out over the gathering of humans and aliens, all exhausted but triumphant. She knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. For in the crucible of this crisis, they had discovered a truth more powerful than any weapon, the strength that comes from unity and the limitless potential of cooperation between worlds. A new era. The dawn broke over Pacifica Bay, painting the sky in hues of hope. The waters that had been a battleground mere hours ago now lay calm, reflecting the golden light of a new day. On the rooftop of what had become their command center, Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood alongside Chief Wells, Oxen, and a recovering Zira, surveying the changed landscape of their city. "It's hard to believe it's over," Wells said, his voice gruff with emotion. Elena nodded, her eyes taking in the scene before them. The flooding had begun to recede, revealing glimpses of familiar streets and buildings. But the city bore the scars of their ordeal, debris-strewn avenues, partially collapsed structures, and the unmistakable signs of an event that had forever altered the course of human history. "Not over," Oxen corrected gently. "Merely beginning." As if to emphasize his point, a low hum filled the air. They looked up to see a sleek, iridescent craft descending from the clouds. It was an awry ship, far larger and more advanced than the escape pod that had brought Zira to Earth. "The council has arrived," Zira said, her mental voice tinged with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Elena felt a flutter of nervousness in her stomach. This was the moment that would define humanity's first official contact with an alien civilization. As the ranking scientist and one of the heroes of the Vorax crisis, she knew she would play a crucial role in these initial negotiations. The awry ship landed with barely a whisper, settling onto a cleared area of the parking garage roof. A shimmering portal appeared in its side, and 3 figures emerged. They were tall and elegant, with the same luminescent skin and large, expressive eyes as Axon and Zira. But there was an aura of authority about them that marked them as leaders. Axon stepped forward, bowing deeply. "Honorable council members, welcome to Earth." The central figure, distinguished by elaborate markings on its skin, spoke in a voice that seemed to bypass their ears and resonate directly in their minds. "Axon, you have done well, and these must be the humans who have so impressed you." Elena stepped forward, summoning all her courage. "I'm Dr. Elena Rodriguez. On behalf of the people of Earth, welcome to our world." The awry leader studied her for a long moment, its alien eyes unreadable. Then, to everyone's surprise, it extended a hand in a very human gesture. "We have much to learn from each other, Dr. Rodriguez. I am Senra, first speaker of the Awry Council. We come seeking friendship and alliance." As Elena shook the alien hand, she felt the weight of history on her shoulders. This simple gesture represented the beginning of a new chapter for both their species. The next few hours were a whirlwind of introductions, explanations, and preliminary discussions. The awry were eager to learn more about how humans had resisted the Vorax, while Elena and her team had countless questions about awry technology and biology. As the day wore on, news of the alien arrivals spread. Military cordons around Pacifica Bay were reinforced, not to keep the awry in, but to manage the influx of media, curious onlookers, and government officials all clamoring for a glimpse of humanity's new alien allies. By nightfall, a joint human-awry statement had been prepared. Elena found herself standing before a bank of cameras, the eyes of the world upon her. Beside her stood Senra, its alien presence a powerful symbol of the new reality humanity was entering. "People of Earth," Elena began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Today marks a turning point in human history. We have faced an unprecedented threat and emerged victorious, thanks to the bravery of countless individuals and the timely assistance of the awry people." She went on to explain, in broad strokes, the events of the past few days, the arrival of the Vorax, the desperate battle to contain them, and the final triumphant collaboration that had saved not just Pacifica Bay, but potentially the entire planet. Senra then stepped forward, its mental voice broadcasting to all assembled. "We come in peace and in hope. Our 2 species, though different in form, share a common spirit of resilience and innovation. We offer our friendship, our knowledge, and our commitment to a shared future among the stars." The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Social media exploded with discussions, theories, and expressions of both excitement and fear. Governments around the world scrambled to formulate responses and policies for this new era of confirmed extraterrestrial life. In the days that followed, Pacifica Bay became the center of the world's attention. As cleanup and reconstruction efforts began, teams of human and awry scientists worked side by side, sharing knowledge and developing new technologies at an unprecedented rate. Elena found herself at the heart of this scientific revolution. Working with Axon and a team of brilliant minds from both species, she helped pioneer new fields of study, xenobiology, psychic physics, and bioadaptive materials, to name just a few. 1 month after the defeat of the Vorax, Elena stood on the balcony of the newly established Interspecies Cooperation Center, looking out over Pacifica Bay. The city was transforming before her eyes. Awry bioengineering techniques were being used to restore damaged ecosystems, while human ingenuity found new applications for alien technology in everything from construction to healthcare. Zira joined her, the young awry's form shimmering slightly in the sunlight. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she said, her mental voice filled with wonder. 2 worlds coming together. Elena smiled, putting an arm around her alien friend. "It is, but it's not always going to be easy. There's still so much fear and mistrust out there. As if to underscore her point, they could hear the faint sounds of a protest from the streets below. Not everyone was happy about the rapid changes or the increasing awry presence on Earth. Arksen's voice came from behind them. Change is never easy, but it is inevitable. The key is to guide it with wisdom and compassion. Elena turned to see the awry scientist approaching, accompanied by Chief Wells. The unlikely pair had become the cornerstone of a new interspecies security task force, working to ensure the safety of both humans and awry as their societies integrated. "We've got some concerns about that deep-sea research station," Wells said, his tone serious but no longer carrying the edge of suspicion it once had when addressing the awry. "Some of the local fishermen are worried it might disrupt their livelihoods." Arksen nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps we could organize a tour for their representatives. Show them how our research will actually help increase fish populations in the long run." Elena felt a surge of pride at how far they'd come in such a short time, but she knew the greatest challenges and opportunities still lay ahead. "There's something else we need to discuss," she said, her tone causing the others to look at her with curiosity. "The deep space telemetry we've been running on the awry ship. We found something." She led them inside to a holographic display that shimmered to life at her touch. It showed a star map with a pulsing red dot at its center. "We've detected an unusual energy signature," Elena explained. "It matches what you've described as Vorax terraforming technology." The implications hung heavy in the air. Somewhere out there, beyond their solar system, the Vorax threat still lurked. Arksen's eyes narrowed as he studied the display. "It's too far for either of our species to reach with current technology." "Current technology," Elena emphasized. "But what about together? Your understanding of psychic propulsion combined with some of the theoretical work we've been doing on warp fields." Zira's eyes lit up with excitement. "We could build a ship. A true interstellar vessel." Wells shook his head, but there was a glimmer of adventure in his eyes. "You scientists are going to be the death of me. But if those shark squid bastards are still out there, someone's got to go kick their scaly butts." Elena looked around at her unlikely family, human and alien, each bringing their own strengths and perspectives. She thought of how far they'd come and the incredible journey that still lay ahead. "Well then," she said, a smile spreading across her face, "I guess we'd better get to work. We've got a starship to build." As they began to discuss the monumental task ahead, Elena felt a sense of profound gratitude and excitement. The Vorax had come to Earth as harbingers of destruction, but in facing that threat, humanity had found its place in a larger cosmic community. The next few years were a whirlwind of activity. The Pacifica Bay Interstellar Initiative, as it came to be known, brought together the best minds from Earth and the awry homeworld. Advances that might have taken decades were achieved in months as the two species pooled their knowledge and resources. Elena found herself dividing her time between groundbreaking scientific research and her role as a public face of human-awry cooperation. She testified before the United Nations, gave lectures at universities around the world, and worked tirelessly to bridge the gap between human and alien cultures. Zira, now recognized as a hero by both species, became a symbol of the potential for harmony and understanding. Her journey from frightened refugee to key player in Earth's defense resonated with millions, inspiring a new generation to look to the stars with hope instead of fear. Arksen and Chief Wells, meanwhile, had their hands full managing the security implications of a world in rapid technological and social flux. They dealt with everything from overzealous human cultists who worshipped the awry as gods to rogue elements within both species who sought to exploit the situation for their own gain. Finally, 5 years to the day after the defeat of the Vorax in Pacifica Bay, a crowd gathered at the newly constructed spaceport just outside the city. At its center stood a ship unlike any ever seen on Earth, a sleek fusion of human and awry technology christened the Horizon. As Elena prepared to board, along with a carefully selected crew of humans and awry, she took one last look at the world she was leaving behind. Pacifica Bay had been transformed. Buildings of revolutionary bioadaptive materials stretched into the sky, while aquari-inspired underwater habitats could be glimpsed beneath the waves. But more than the physical changes, it was the spirit of the place that moved her. Humans and aquari walked side by side in the streets, their differences celebrated rather than feared. Children of both species played together in parks, their laughter a testament to the bonds that had been forged. Arxon approached, his violet eyes shimmering with emotion. "The council has asked me to convey their highest honors to you and your crew, Elena. What you're attempting, it will change everything." Elena embraced her alien friend. "We've already changed everything, Arxon. This is just the next step." As she turned to board the ship, she felt a tug on her hand. Zira stood there, her young face a mixture of pride and sadness. "I wish I could go with you," she said. Elena knelt down, meeting those large, expressive eyes. "Your job is here, Zira. You're the bridge between our peoples, and when we return successful, it'll be because of the foundation you've helped build." With final goodbyes said, Elena joined her crew aboard the Horizon. As the ship's engines hummed to life, a sound unlike anything Earth had ever produced, she thought about the journey ahead. They were venturing into the unknown, carrying the hopes and dreams of two worlds. The Horizon rose gracefully into the sky, quickly becoming a bright star in the heavens. On the ground, humans and aquari alike watched its ascent, united in their hopes for its success and safe return. As Earth receded behind them, Elena looked out at the star-strewn vastness of space. The Vorax was still out there, a threat to all life, but they would face that threat together, with the combined strength, intelligence, and spirit of two remarkable species. Whatever challenges awaited them in the depths of space, Elena knew that the true victory had already been won. In coming together to face a common enemy, humanity and the aquari had discovered something far greater than either could have achieved alone, a shared destiny among the stars. The Horizon accelerated, carrying its crew towards adventure, discovery, and the promise of a new era for all sentient life. As faster-than-light engines engaged, Elena whispered a quote that seemed fitting for this moment of cosmic significance. "We are made of star stuff. We are a way for the cosmos to know itself." Carl Sagan. With a flash of light, the Horizon disappeared into the depths of space, embarking on a journey that would shape the future of two worlds and beyond. The age of Earth's isolation was over. A new chapter in the story of life in the universe had begun.